police civil and criminal immunity in the state.
Lawmakers are not seeing eye to eye. State Capitol reporter Ryan Hall has the story in Montgomery.
A bill is causing controversy in the Senate that would give law enforcement more protection in lawsuits. It'll be taken up on the Senate floor at some point in the next 2 weeks. I talked to lawmakers to find out how that vote could go. The bill makes police officers immune from lawsuits unless they clearly violate someone's rights. That includes acting recklessly or using excessive force outside their authority. Senator Arthur Orr says the bill updates state law to match Supreme Court decisions.
We believe that this will certainly offer protections to consumers or to citizens of Alabama from abuse by the police and or law enforcement in general, but also add some known protections.
One new protection gives officers a pretrial hearing to prove their innocence. Senator Andrew Jones says it will help with recruitment.
Yeah, no one wants to work in a job when they're, in harm's way, and then they have to worry about someone else second guessing their decisions after the fact and potentially them having a, criminal issue.
But Senator Robert Stewart says those decisions need more accountability.
Not having accountability could possibly attract the wrong type of officers. So we need to be very wary of the intent for people entering a profession.
Stewart says he's concerned some law enforcement will take advantage of the immunity
and just shoot and kill innocent people who didn't do anything without accountability, without there being repercussions.
But Jones disagrees.
I'd say that there are safeguards in effect in the bill. We still have things like body cameras and those type of situations. I think we just need some common sense protections for folks who are putting themselves in harm's way.
There's only 3 days left in the legislative session. If it passes the Senate, the House will need to concur with the bill before it goes to the governor's desk.
I can't find a seconder usually when I propose this, but I don't care. I don't need a seconder. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this can pick a number, get online, and kiss.
No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed are greater than the legal services provided by other lawyers. I'm Harry Steele. You found the Heart of Dixie podcast number 7. We're joined today by Brandon Mosley, content manager and reporter at the Alabama Gazette. How are you today, Brandon?
I'm doing fine, Harry. How are you?
Really well today, thank you. And we have a special guest, also an attorney. This is the first time I've ever done the whole rules of professional responsibility preamble, and I actually had another attorney on the podcast with me. So welcome, Director of Pardons and Parole for the state of Alabama, Cam Ward. How are you today,
Thanks,
Cam?
Harry. Doing great, thank you.
So you were appointed by Governor Ivey. Does this say 2020?
Yes, almost 5 years ago, 2020 by Governor Ivey.
And so just a little disclosure, you worked for the city of Alabaster far longer than I did. I worked there from 2006 until 2011, and we overlapped quite a bit, didn't we?
Correct. Yeah, I was there from 2000s when I started, and then left in 2018. Yeah, 2018. So about 18 years, actually, yes.
And so, anyway, do we want to give away the secret sauce? You recruited Birmingham Tobacco and some of these other, not just from Birmingham, but other industries to our industrial. It's actually not our industrial park. The industrial park was actually not in Alabaster.
It was in Alabaster, but it was owned by the county. It was a county park owned within our city limits, which is kind of an unusual setup. But yes, that was my primary job when I worked there for industrial development.
And so the governor taps you to run pardons and paroles. Oh, and also I blacked out the names, but you're good tidings that your daughter just recently graduated from school.
That's correct. She graduated from University of Central Florida. She's my oldest child at 22. So yeah, she just graduated last weekend from the University of Central Florida.
That's great, man. I'll tell you. And so here's all your bona fide. So you and I are both red waivers. Did you graduate from Troy State? Troy State, like I did.
Yeah, I was a Troy State Trojan. Yes.
Trojan. So was I. I graduated in 2000 with a master's. When did you graduate? Like 95?
93. I graduated in 93 and then went to Cumberland from 93 to 96 for my law degree.
And you were classmates with stepmama Carmen. Do you remember Carmen Mothershed? So
yes.
she's now married to my father.
Oh, there you go. Small world.
Small world. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about more of what's going on at Pardons and Paroles. I'm sure you're prepared for those kind of questions. And I don't want to monopolize things. Brandon's our reporter. So Brandon, why don't you jump in and fire away at our Pardons and Parole director?
Good luck retraining our inmates and getting them back out into the Alabama economy.
Well, that's one of the biggest things, we do. Let me say this, Harry. One of the things a lot of people, don't realize in my role, I'm a cabinet member. Now, Alabama has a bit of an unusual system. Usually in most states, the Board of Pardon Parole, the Bureau of Pardon Parole, and DOC, Department of Corrections, are actually one agency in most states. For some reason, in the 1930s, Alabama's Constitution was amended to change that. So we have a Department of Corrections. We have a Bureau of Pardon Parole, which is a cabinet appointment by the governor, which is me. Then we also have a Board of Pardon Parole, which is completely separate from both of us. They are kind of they're out there independent of everybody else. Now, we provide them with legal advice and we provide them help put together case files, but the board, very seldom do I have contact with the board. Usually, maybe once a month we talk, but they're very separate and just a separate entity altogether. So it's kind of confusing to a lot of people who aren't familiar with state government.
Yeah, that came about in the 1930s because allegedly there was a governor selling pardons to people. And so the legislature said, hey, we had enough of that. We're doing another constitutional amendment, and we're creating a board of pardons and paroles that is independent from the governor. So the governor cannot actually pardon you in Alabama.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what happened to Brandon. At least what I've read and been told is that the board the governor was bribing people, getting money, and at the same time selling pardons. Now, in Alabama, the governor can grant you clemency from a death penalty hearing, but the governor cannot pardon you. You have to come through over here to get a pardon. That's the only way you can get a pardon in Alabama.
So I understand that before you took the job, the rate of paroleisms was very low, and one of your edicts was to try to weed out the bad actors and keep them in jail. I mean, yes. I understand that's in general what the parole board does, but I think so. Have you guys been successful in getting those numbers up, or is it just we got a whole lot of bad guys?
I call it the Goldilocks approach. One, there's a lot of people out there who say we got to parole X number of people a year. Well, I think a quota system for parole is a terrible idea.
Agreed.
What you need to look at a case by case basis. Or have you rehabilitated? Should you be paroled or not? So, at one point, the parole rates in Alabama were as high as 50%, and a lot of bad people got out. Then at one point it got as low as 8%, and a lot of people who should have gotten out didn't. Right now, today, I think that grant rate's around 28%, and that's probably, looking at the population being considered for parole, that's probably a very good number, because the prison population, due to sentencing changes, has gotten a lot more violent than it used to be. So you don't have as many. Everybody assumes it's full of low-level drug offenders, and it's just not the case. The vast majority are pretty heavy crimes.
Okay, so I understand you're a member of the governor's cabinet, and we don't want to ask you anything where you would have to answer a question that you don't know. But
yeah,
given all of these tough on crime bills that we've been seeing lately, Anaya's law that allows them to keep people in jail pending trial. I'm assuming that would be in the county jail, not in the prison system yet. But
correct.
We don't have any jail capacity. We don't seem to be able to get these guys paroled out and back into the workforce like we'd like to. And it doesn't seem that we have the capacity to house many more people based on the numbers and the fact that we're under a threat of the federal marshal service coming in and taking over our prisons.
Correct.
So do you ever get asked about, hey, Cam, we're thinking about doing this and it could increase our prison population by 10%. Do you ever field questions like that?
Yeah, I do. We get time. So, and this is, by the way, I've 20 years plus in state government, now 25 years in state government. I've seen criminal justice, and it's not just Alabama, every state this way. Criminal justice issues tend to ebb and flow. You tend to have all of a sudden 1,000 tough on crime bills and the prison system swells. And then you'll come back and go the other way. It ebbs and flows with the trends of society. COVID really it did actually drive the crime rate up some, not as much as everybody thinks it did. It really didn't. And now we're actually back to pre-COVID levels. We're actually lower now than we were since the 1990s. So, yeah, I get questions about that. I always tell everybody this. Criminal justice bills need to be balanced. You need to be balanced, and that's how you handle all this. If you're not balanced approach, I got you, Harry. If you're not taking a balanced approach to criminal justice, you're doing a disservice. So, for example, I always say there's certain people on the one side that, to be honest with you, are very, very all tough on crime. Well, I have one group on the other side that all they care about is the reentry and services. I always say it's a balance. There's certain people, there's a carrot and stick approach. The stick is if you commit a crime, you're going to get punished. Then the carrot is this: if you do good and rehabilitate yourself, in my belief, then there should be a way to reduce your sentence. There should be a way to get parole at some point if you show that you're truly rehabilitated. I mean, that's the whole purpose. Is it's supposed to be quote unquote corrections.
And the legislature has added that new facility down in Perry County where you do training of parolees before they go into parole. So they should go and hit it with some sort of job skill versus just being turned loose.
That's correct. Totally correct. So what we have is when they decided to do a bond issue on prison construction in Alabama, they decided they had a couple changes they wanted to make. One, they changed what they call the Correctional Financing Authority. That makes sense. Correctional Financing Authority was made in the 40s. It's a board that determines if you're going to issue a bond to build a new prison. How this happened, I don't know, but they amended the law so that there were an equal number of Republicans and Democrats on there. Then there was a complaint that, well, maybe we have too many. It shouldn't be a tie. There should be one more for the majority party. So somehow, some way, the compromise was reached, and the legislature came up with putting me on that authority. I'll be the first to say I'm not a bond expert, but I do my best. But that facility, what happened was when the bond was issued by the legislature to build two new prisons, one down in Escambia County, one in Elmore County, what they did was they said, but in order to do this, in order to get the votes, we got to have somebody buy that empty prison over in Perry County. And it's empty, but it was built in 2006, so it's not very old. And we want somebody to buy it. And the compromise, and it was one I really pushed hard for, was Pardons and Parole took it over. We took it over, staff it, and what we do is we have classes of anywhere from 60 to 100 parolees at a time that go through there for drug treatment, mental health treatment, and pretty extensive job training. We do have job training for about 19 different job skills. Now, usually it's like welding is very popular, plumbing. We do a lot of that. And then we partner with the private sector to hire them. And I will say this, of all the hundreds of graduates we've had go out of that facility, not a single one in my 4-year period has committed a crime and gone back in. Not a single person. But it's because of the intense treatment, the education, and job skills, real job skills, like good paying jobs with benefits, retirement, the whole 9 yards.
All right, so I got some things I want to talk to you about. Interesting to me as an attorney, having nothing to really do with your current position. Okay. So, a lot of people probably aren't aware that we have what's called the Alabama Law Institute. And
correct.
And so it's my understanding that you guys go out there and look at model, like the last thing I remember that y'all played around with was like the limited liability corporation laws. Alabama was we were one of the last states to adopt LLC laws, but the reason we got it right was because 49 other states had screwed it all up and made all kinds of adjustments and whatnot. So, is it safe to say that that's the kind of thing that the Alabama law, that's my understanding of what you guys did, was propose model rules for
and most of those model rules and legislation usually, Harry, came from a national group. It's called the Uniform Law Commission. It's from lawyers in all. It's kind of very similar to the Bar Association, American Bar Association, but it's different.
Except it's actually practitioners like me and you that actually know something. I can tell you the reason that you got put on this committee related to revenue bonds or whatever is that there's like 5 of us who have ever dealt with this stuff ever as attorneys or as practitioners, right? I mean, how often? Correct. How many attorneys in Alabama have ever issued industrial development bonds?
No,
50.
You're right. The experience helps you get there.
Exactly.
And I will say this: the Uniform Law Commission, and by the way, I'm one of Alabama's 5 delegates to that commission. We meet 3 or 4 times a year and discuss LLCs, you name it. So, but it's also a practitioner experience. The reason I'm a head of pardon parole was because I spent so much time in the legislature's judiciary chairman talking about criminal justice related issues. So it kind of gave me a natural background to fill in on this role.
So that was the other issue, was the fact that you were the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee and all that entailed. Well, anyway, I think that that's fascinating, and I'm, as one of the things that was that I was unaware of until I began to do some research on how all these things came about, and then I kicked over that rock. Hey, there's this organization that's been here for a long time, and they've been doing good things, unbeknownst to me.
Yeah, they do.
So
they do good work, and it's various subjects.
So another thing that I meant to mention in the beginning. So Brandon, do you know who Neil Bortz is? He had a radio show over in Atlanta. So when I first went to work for Alabaster, he had my name in his mouth, Cam's name in his mouth, all the city council members, because of a condemnation. And, I guess it was over the Colonial Promenade.
Right.
Which
North,
I think everybody would agree was a net positive for the city of Alabaster and Shelby County in general. But yeah, that whole thing, baptism by fire, being on the radio every morning over in Atlanta, just wearing us out. So anyway, let's talk about some things that happened in the legislature. And of course, we talked to the sponsor of the bill, Brandon and I, on the previous podcast. And, I don't know if this is good, bad, or indifferent, but my opinion is from a liability standpoint, it would behoove the school boards and the state, or whoever's going to be liable in some kind of a lawsuit, to make sure that the only cameras on campus are cameras that we control. Now, the fact that the cell phone has a camera and a recording device on it, I think, is the main issue. They're saying that it's being a distraction or whatever. I'm sure it is a distraction, but this is the world we live in now. And there are a couple of, I can't believe I find myself aligned with Chris Elliott on an issue, but Chris Elliott's right. This is, cutting off communications between children and parents. And it seems like something that the local school board should be able to deal with at their.
Yeah, but now, when I was going to school, there was no communications with the parents because we had no phones.
Yeah, but
somehow we survived.
But the issue, the debate comes around one issue, and you hit on it, Harry, and Senator Elliott has too, and that is this: you have a balance. One, it is a distraction; it is creating problems in classrooms. The second fallback, other side of the argument, though, is you've seen cases where school shootings occur, and one of the first communications come from students, and they get a lot of information from these students calling out to 911, calling families, calling people, informing them of what's going on. It's like real-time intelligence. So it's a balancing act. Now, I don't think anybody has yet spoken to the exact way you can balance that, but you got to balance it out because there is actually a utility in many of these phones. And by the way, nobody owns a calculator anymore. We do it on our cell phone. So it's got to be a balance.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Parker's Law passes both chambers. Y'all familiar with this?
Hold on, let me pull it up.
Nursing mothers are exempt from jury duty.
Yeah, that was because of an incident in Jefferson County where some crazy judge wouldn't allow some mom to,
nurse
jury duty, and then her kid was making noise, and the judge threatened to call DHR if they brought the kid. It's like, well, how does the kid eat if he's not at jury duty, and mom can't leave jury duty? Eventually, the Alabama Supreme Court read about this nonsense, and they passed a rule saying, hey, nursing moms, y'all can opt out of jury duty. But by that time, April Weaver and maybe Representative DuBose, had already introduced legislation, and, this passed. This was bipartisan, pretty much non-controversial.
All right.
Yeah. Typical example, Harry, of a lot of times too, you see, I say this a lot about the legislature, and I don't have a problem with this law. I don't think it applies in a lot of cases. But I will say this, oftentimes the legislature, and it happened when I was there, and I probably did it myself. You see something on TV last night, constituents call you today, got to pass a law to change a whole state law. And you're dealing with a very narrow scope of people here that it's going to impact. I think it is great to help these mothers that are nursing, but at the same time, I don't think we have a rampant issue of nursing mothers being forced to abandon their babies for jury duty. I don't know if it is. I haven't seen it.
Okay, and it's not very Republican to pass a bunch of laws that are unnecessary. I was going to say on this law, how are we going to find out about the sharks attacking people at the beach if we don't have our cell phones? But anyway, I digress. Yeah. So one of the bills that we were talking about earlier, the debate over police immunity bill, that is on the table now, isn't it, gentlemen? Don't they have till midnight tonight?
The last day
tomorrow.
Wednesday.
Wednesday at midnight they have to pass it by, yes.
Yeah. Wednesday is the last day of the session. Whenever they gavel out, it's done, or the clock strikes midnight.
Okay, so
the House has passed it. The Senate has been playing with it. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a committee substitute entered on the floor in the Senate, and we'll see where that goes if we get that far.
Okay, so doesn't everybody get a preliminary hearing anyway?
No, this gives the officer the option to have a hearing saying, hey, whatever happened, whatever went down, it wasn't reckless, and it was in the line of duty. If those two standards are met, everything else, and the judge agrees, everything else in this prosecution stops at that point.
And you're talking civil or criminal or both?
Criminal.
And so, Harry, as you know, as an attorney, police officer, even I do in my role, we have sovereign immunity. If you're acting within the scope of your job description and duties, you have a level of immunity. What this bill's going after is they say that sometimes the courts have been creeping into that sovereign immunity and really making prosecutions based upon passion and not necessarily casting judgment based upon did this person act outside of the scope of their official duties. And I think that's what and Representative Rex Reynolds is the big pusher that. He's a general fund chairman.
Okay, so I got a fundamental question for you. So I started paging in Montgomery in 89. Okay. That was my first trip up there. Got to know a bunch of people in the legislature. At that point in time, about half of the legislators were lawyers.
Yeah, not anymore.
And now what are they, Cam? Half of them are what? active duty or retired law enforcement.
Well, you got a lot of law enforcement, but you have a lot of retirees, and you have a pretty good contingent of law enforcement. Not as lawyers have ticked up again a little bit, but people don't realize that is not the biggest class of people in the legislature. The legislature does have probably 15, 17 attorneys out of 140 members. But the bulk are either retirees, you have a large law enforcement contingent, and you also have a large business owners contingent.
Yeah, and rightly so on the business owners. But what's the, I don't know, like law enforcement was a job that people took when they couldn't find anything else when I was coming out of school. And now we have special tracks for school resource officers, and now every sheriff's department has an intelligence unit and a SWAT team and a major crimes unit and a rural crimes unit, and there doesn't seem to be any end in sight in the money that we can spend in this state on, law enforcement. And now, because a majority of, here's what I see. The federal government is not going to be able to round up all these illegal aliens. And I saw this as a preamble to, we're about to start kicking doors, and we want to make sure that we have as much immunity as possible if we're going to be acting as, rounding up, doing things that we haven't done in a long time in Alabama, like snatching people out of churches and, other things like that we've never done before. So I saw this as a preamble to, Trump coming in, and we want to get some more protections.
This is more a reaction to what's happened in other states where, criminal charges have been brought against officers. I mean, the George Floyd thing being, omnipresent. I mean, I still think he dies of a drug overdose, and I'm not sure you can get a conviction in the state of Alabama. But again, what's happening in other states where law enforcement is getting sued, and again, here in this state, we're getting often frivolous, complaints of excessive force. And so some of the officers and the governor said, well, hey, let's end some of this Monday morning quarterbacking by the courts, and let's put up a shield around the blue. And again, I don't think we're going to know if this passes. We're not going to know exactly and entirely what it does until the Alabama case comes out and the Alabama Supreme Court sort of sets the case law. This is what it means. These are the barriers. These are the boundaries.
Okay.
Figure it out, Lord.
So
Harry, one of the things I've noticed is too, now I will say this, and this happens here at Pardon Parole a lot, particularly when it comes to police, and I think the bill partially tries to address this problem. You have a group of, and they're typically out of New York where they've been, but all they do go around the country and they sue cops. They just do everywhere they go. That's their cottage industry, and they come in, they read something online or in the news. First thing they do is they go down and go, hey, we'll handle your case for free. And you've seen the proliferation of these cases lately. Some may be justified. No one's saying anyone should get away from reckless behavior. But at the same time, some of these folks are coming in and suing just because it's an industry they develop. It's kind of a niche industry.
Okay, so I have an observation. I'm not saying it's not an accusation. It's an observation, okay?
Yeah.
So this is the first year that Hoss Mack, who is our former sheriff here in Baldwin County, 5-term sheriff, resigned to become when Bobby Timmons died, he became the president of the Sheriff's Association.
Correct.
And the lobbyist for the Sheriff's Association is old Randy Hillman, and he spent 20 years as the lobbyist for the District Attorneys Association.
Correct.
And also head of what the hell do they call that organization he was in charge of?
OPS.
Office of Prosecution Services. He dictated how many baby DAs each DA got. So that made him extremely powerful in law enforcement circles in Alabama, and everybody knows Randy, and everybody likes Randy. And so now we got Randy and Hoss, and everybody likes him. And, my question was were they the genesis for this package? And no one says yes or no, but they obviously supported it.
They support it, but no, the genesis is actually, and I was around when it first came up last year, but the genesis of all this is actually State Representative Rex Reynolds. Rex is the chairman of the General Fund Committee, and he is a previous law enforcement. He's retired law enforcement himself. That was kind of his genesis.
Police chief.
Yeah, he was the genesis of all this, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, he went to the speaker, and then the speaker and President Pro Tem of the Senate went to the governor, and this is one of the ones they took with them.
I got you.
Yeah,
but Rex is the pushing force behind this,
and I kind of think part of it goes back to the last quadrennium when they the legislature really dealt a body blow to the Sheriff's Association when they passed constitutional carry, because whatever you say about it, it was opposed by the sheriffs pretty strong, whether for officer safety reasons or for money reasons. And now, law enforcement, they want, they lost a major lobbying political battle, and they want some trophy on the wall for this session. And I think this is one of the things they want, is one of their priorities.
Mm-hmm. Those pesky Second Amendment people at Bama Carey. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm corporate counsel for Bama Carey, right?
Well, at the same time, and Brandon, that's probably a very good analysis. I know, obviously, law enforcement wants a bill. I personally, I don't have a problem. It doesn't affect me, but I personally don't have a problem with it. But I would agree, Brandon, that there was that constitutional carry last year. It was just one, and honestly, I agree with I think constitutional carry. I totally agree with it. But I do think there was a perception in law enforcement that somehow this was a slap. Now, there's a debate out there as to, was it a slap because of safety, or was it a slap because of permit fees going away, or a combination of both? So that's a good topic of debate there in Montgomery.
So everyone's aware that May the 4th has become the unofficial Star Wars Day? So is everyone
May the 4th be with you?
Yeah, may the 4th be with you. So is everyone familiar with the 5.7 firearm? So all the gun nuts. So it's 5.7 by 28 millimeter. I think it's a little neck down
the military is switching to 6.7.
So anyway, everybody with a 5.7 took pictures with their 5.7 and posted it to Facebook. I just thought I would do, while we're talking guns. Okay, so the voice of Alabama politics. Is everybody familiar with Bill Britt's little TV show or whatever? So recently they've been beating the brakes off of Senator Tuberville, talking about whether or not he lives here. I'm really kind of tired of this pay for play for airtime with these different outlets, and it's not just them. If you recall.
Kyle Whitmire's doing the same thing.
Yeah, story of the death Alabama pastor targeted by right-wing website wins Esquire in its first Pulitzer Prize. So, everybody's familiar with that story. Things that may or may not be news, but, we certainly treat them like they are. And anyway, I thought I would point out that it certainly seems like Mr. Ainsworth was the first one to the trough, and so let's talk about this for a second. Governor Ivey, it appears that her cancer has returned, and
that's a rumor. I can't verify.
Does anybody imagine that she's not going to finish out her term? Would that?
No, I would bet the mortgage on my house that she will finish out her term. And by the way, the rumor of her being sick and her demise has been around since I was in the legislature. And I will say this: everybody can call her a Meemaw or whatever. That's one of the tough. I've served under or with 4 different governors, and I will tell you that's the toughest. That's a tough governor right there. And I just I have no doubt in my mind she finishes her term. In fact, we have a cabinet call every Friday with her, and periodically she'll have us over for breakfast or lunch to talk. And I mean, she's, as long as I've been with her, and even to this day, she's been very, very good and on top of her game. I'll tell you that.
I mean, Kyle Whitmire has gone to the wall about 3 times over the course of Kay's governorship, reporting on her impending demise. And eventually he'll be right, but I don't know whether she's going to be governor or it's going to be 10 years from now. Death comes for us all. I don't see making decisions based off of rumors of health conditions that may or may not be real.
I just don't think they're real. She did have a spat with cancer, and I think this has been reported on before she became governor. She had something happen in Colorado, but I can just tell you she's very healthy and she's very open about her health issues. And right now, I just don't think there are any. I think she finishes her term.
The only other thing that I would mention is if you watch their program, Bill Britt's little program, it appears to me that all of the advertising are click it or ticket or,
a lot of state advertising.
A lot of state agency advertising there at that place. And then
you have that at the Alabama Gazette if they want to send it this way.
Yeah, so exactly. But acting like we're independent news agencies and then reporting on our political enemies is not what the Alabama Policy Institute, I imagine, had envisioned for 1819 News, nor whoever ponied up to start this farce of a news rag.
I was actually with Bill Britt when he started that up. It wasn't our idea, but the money we were promised disappeared overnight. We didn't make anything for 6 months.
Wonder where it went. So Governor Kay Ivey has officially signed a bill restructuring the makeup of the Birmingham Waterworks Board.
Yes.
Wow.
I can't believe that passed.
I can't either. And what happens to all of the...
It's a testimony to how corrupt that was, that even Democrats voted to kill the Birmingham Waterworks Board.
Harry, when I was an attorney, way back before I was even with Alabaster, I worked for the state as an assistant prosecutor, and I will tell you this, that was the only case I actually went to trial on, was that case. This is back in the 90s. They were corrupt back then. They're corrupt now. They always have been. They pocket enormous sums of money to be a quote-unquote board member. It's unreal. They get paid for every time they meet. Well, guess what? If they have lunch, they count that as a meeting. They made hundreds of thousands of dollars for his board members, and the corruption never ended. And the fact of the matter is, an enormous portion of that waterworks system geographically is outside of the city of Birmingham city limits. So to say Birmingham residents must serve on that board when you have all these people outside the city who are being serviced by them, they should have representation too.
Half of the water they distribute, they never get paid for. Right. It goes to all unmetered taps. It's leaked away. It's thrown away.
Mayor Langford fills up his pool anytime he wants.
Yeah, there's no telling where all the water's going. I mean, somebody thought this would be a cush. Asked me that the new board was going to be cush gig. Oh, heck no. For a year, they'll spend a year trying to figure out where all the water is, and they'll spend 2 years in court.
Harry, the biggest case I saw, and the one that I was involved with, is there was a board member who had for free, he was on the board, he had the employees there run an extended water line to his private residence because he didn't get enough water pressure to shower. He didn't pay for it, he just had him do it.
Well, Cam, why the hell else would you be on the water board if you couldn't get an extra line run to your house for your pressure problem, man?
I mean, my gosh, that's the kind of stuff, that board...
This ain't about serving your fellow man, it's about getting your water pressure up.
Yeah. Of course, I just don't think the government should have to pay for my private water pressure,
Okay, so like we already kicked this around, but that appears to be a misnomer, and we'll move on. So Tuberville said he was glad to meet with the U.S. Israeli Education Association and my good friend, Coach Bruce Pearl. to discuss the security and prosperity of our friend Israel. Now, Brandon is a huge supporter of, the idea of a Zionist state and all these types of things, and that, we've made commitments and we have to, I'm one of these people that think, it's a whole lot of treasure and a whole lot of people are getting killed. And I'm kind of like Trump. I just want everybody to stop dying. I understand it was an unprovoked attack and all that kind of stuff, but the level of attention that this is garnering at this time reminds me of the things that I was forced to believe about the Black Lives Matter movement. And if anyone has anything to say contrary, you're an anti-Semite, and nothing could be further from the truth about me personally.
One thing that worked in Israel's advantage was that the people that came out most forcefully against their policy and were loudest with it were blatantly anti-Semitic. So, a lot of us is like, well, I kind of feel sorry sort of for the poor people in Gaza, but you don't want to stand with people that are chanting, for the elimination of the entire Jewish country.
And burning American flags and all this other stuff.
They're burning American flags and Israel flags out in the streets of America. And it's like, yeah, I'm not entirely with Benji Netanyahu and his policies. I know I'm not with Khalid Mohammed.
Certainly not.
And what those people in the streets are talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's a tough call because, one, I agree with you, Harry, on one thing. Everyone wants peace over there. Now, sure. I will say everyone wants peace. Everybody wants the dying to stop. Now, I will be saying that they have been fighting since biblical times over there, so we know about that. But I will say, Israel had every right to defend itself, retaliate. I stand with Israel. Now, I will say that one thing that the Netanyahu coalition government has to be careful about is not getting drugged too far into the never end the war no matter what. I think you have to be careful with that. And I think President Trump has said the same thing.
Well, there's certainly a circling of the wagons, and Bruce Pearl has been very adamant about his position since the beginning of all this. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about yet another setback for medical marijuana. I haven't seen anything else on that. Have you, Brandon, since our last podcast?
Not really. The court has tossed out the judge's temporary restraining order. Then the judge responded to that by tossing out the awards that, they had negotiated back in December of 2023. And we talked with John McMillan. He indicated to us that there's going to be an appeal by the commission for, about that Judge Anderson's ruling. That's kind of where we're at. We're waiting for that appeal to be filed, and we're sort of waiting to see, do we proceed with a fourth round of integrated license awards? If you tossed out the first round, the second round, and the third round, I could pretty much bet people are going to sue if you do a fourth round. I mean, some people that have licenses, if they don't get their licenses, and there's some people that in 3 rounds of awards have never gotten a license, and they have gone to court and sued against every deal. And if we have a fourth one and they don't get it this time, they'll sue on that too.
What this issue demonstrates is how much money is involved in the industry, because
ding
multi-millionaires who have these facilities, many of them out of state even, who are trying to locate here now. But the money is such a big contract, such a big license issue, since they're limited.
Cam,
that's where the issue is.
Cam, this will mean generational wealth for whoever controls these licensees, okay? The 5 integrated license, their grandkids will be Vanderbilts.
Yes. We created a monopoly system here where there will be like 5 families or 5 groups that have the whole, pretty much, most of the business will be out by the 5 integrators. and everybody saw dollar signs, 36 entities applied. I mean, at one point, there was an outfit that approached me about joining their group. And it was like, yeah, Brenda doesn't have money to spend in this.
Or influence that I'm willing to burn on the altar of marijuana.
Get us anywhere.
Right.
And only 5 are allowed to get it, and they're going to keep suing and fighting and battling until, I think the Alabama Supreme Court's eventually going to rule, you 5 are the guys, go do it.
The problem is, and one, I know Senator Tim Melson who passed it, and in fact, he tried it 2 or 3 times before I left. I voted for it. And I will say that he's dead on what he's trying to do. Everybody supports it dead on. The problem is you have some nefarious characters that are using the court system to gum it up until they get their way. That's what's going on.
All right.
No, that's exactly what's happening.
So, Brandon, you get to talk about your article. Psychoactive cannabinoid advocates urge governor to veto cannabis legislation. And this is related to CBD-derived hemp products.
This is not medical cannabis.
Separate issue.
This is not marijuana that you use for a medical condition under the care of a doctor. What happened was the 2018 Farm Bill, some genius in Congress decided to allow us to grow hemp. Hemp is similar to marijuana, but we can do all kinds of cool stuff out of hemp. We can make automobile panels, you can make clothes, you can make paper, you can make hardwood flooring, you can make siding for garages and whatnot, and yes, shingles for roofs. Yeah, let's go ahead and legalize hemp. Well, I don't think anybody made any of that out of any of the hemp fibers. What they started doing was harvesting hemp flowers and producing CBD oil. And all of a sudden, CBD popped up everywhere. And we were like, okay, that's okay. The chemists are smarter than the legislators or the people in Congress, because you can take that CBD and you can distill it, and I can pull out Delta 8, Delta 10, Delta 12, even Delta 9, and the federal law makes it legal to then sell essentially marijuana in quantities that in THC levels that you're not going to even get from the marijuana plant. It's a synthetic marijuana. And so this legislation would stamp down on that and treat it sort of like alcohol, but maybe a little even more heavy rigged, and put under the ABC board. And obviously, if you've been making your money selling psychoactive cannabis and 50 milligram drinks and 250 milligram gummies in Shelby County and all this kind of stuff, you don't want a license from the CBD board. You don't want a 10 milligram cap. You don't want all the smokable product taken off the shelves. You don't want the convenience stores not be able to sell anymore. So they're asking the governor to veto this legislation. Good luck with that, because I think if Kay Ivey vetoes it, I think the legislature on Wednesday will probably override and they'll pass it. Maybe if the governor just has some sort of little change she wants, they accept the change. But I'm thinking most of this is going to become law one way or the other. I could be wrong.
The issue comes up. This is very similar to what we had in the 2013, 14, 15, and 16 legislative session. I called it whack-a-mole. Every gas station came up with a new synthetic they would offer to sell people. Kratom was one. And every time they did it, a new one, they'd ban it, a new one would pop up. And what happened was unregulated, but at the same time, oftentimes it was kids. There were kids getting hold of it, and there was just no screening process. You sold to whoever. And so I think one of the biggest concerns is you have particularly Delta 8, which is a synthetic, it's a hybrid between the two. And I think the problem is the lack of any kind of oversight has created a situation where it's proliferated, and anybody who's a minor can get hold of it pretty easily right now. And I think that was a driving part of the concern. Now that bill's changed multiple times. I haven't kept up with it as much. It's changed multiple times since it started.
Well, so the bottom line is you either have to be in the business of only selling CBD products, a specialty store. You have to be 21 to get in, or it has to be it can't be a gas station, but it can be like a big grocery store over 48,000 square feet or something, right?
Yeah. As long as you have 14,000 square foot.
14.
And you're 75% food. So that knocks out Dollar General. I think it knocks out Target and Walmart too.
You're talking about like a Publix or Dixie, Piggly Wiggly?
Greer's.
Yeah, Piggly can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So Lulu's Law has been signed into law. We have beat this to death. Did everybody see the Moms for Liberty, J.D. Crow, Spirit of Fair Hope? Yeah, I just can't believe that we have a local library.
I don't know why Fair Hope is fighting this.
It's $43,000. They got that dropped between the damn couch cushions and Fair Hope.
But politically, I don't get who they're playing to here.
Well, it's certainly given a bunch of people who don't care much about library books something to talk about. John Wall says, well, of course, we're going to have him on next week, right?
I'm trying to lock that down.
Okay. So anyway,
Ed Oliver is actually this next week or this coming week.
Well, we'll kick that around with him. So, is everybody familiar with SB 270, the redistribution of sales tax for the school system in Baldwin County? Apparently, that is indefinitely postponed.
Yeah, that's dead in water.
It's dead for this. It's dead. Yeah, it's dead.
Okay. That was dead the minute Chris introduced that. The rest of the legislature didn't want to get involved in any kind of Baldwin County war.
So the project that won't flush, I'll just be real nice. The U.S. Transportation Secretary announced the department has approved $550 million grant to break ground on the long-awaited Mobile Bayway project. And the grant is part of more than $3 billion in funding awarded to infrastructure projects around the country. The problem is this bridge is going to cost $2.5 billion by the time we get ready to turn dirt on it. And here you can see the artist rendering of what it's going to look like. There's this is sort of like, Corridor X in Jefferson County. I can see the need for it. I just don't see where the money is for it. I mean, it would be more deficit spending by the federal government for a project that would be cool. Yeah, it'll save us 20 minutes getting across the bay. All right, so the 40th Annual Heritage Day Festival in Silver Hill was held a few weeks ago, and Sheriff Mack was the Grand Marshal. The legislature passes a bill to extend the state's wiretapping authority and add interpreters. Brendan, tell us about this article you wrote.
This doesn't create anything really new other than it allows interpreters to listen into the wiretaps. The big thing was the original legislation allowing them to wiretap in drug investigations. It had a sunset clause. They had to address the sunset clause. They just went ahead and ripped out the sunset clause. That's why it extends it. It's now a thing. We don't have to come back to the legislature every 3 years or whatever to, further extend it. It's so much safer to listen into a conversation than it is for, Brandon or Harry to pretend to be drug buyers and go down there and meet some known dangerous felon and do a buy.
So do you see this as a companion bill to they created some kind of organized crime task force or database?
Well, this existed prior to that, but yeah, I think those two will work hand in hand.
Yeah.
When, the database gets up and going.
And of course, this is there was a op-ed written by Oxford police chief about a chance to lead the nation in supporting this officer, back the blue pack of bills, and there was a fallen officer memorial service. I guess last week was.
We have that
Law
every
Enforcement
year.
Memorial.
I was invited. I couldn't get freed up.
This is State Police Week, actually. Right now, we're in the middle of State Police Week. So I imagine you'll see a lot more of that.
I got you. So, anyway, Jennifer Boozer, who is the owner of, is it Cannabama? Cannabama.
And I think she's created her own Alabama Hemp and Vape Association.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, she's taking shots at A.G. Marshall and,
And she's taking shots at Tim Melson. If the governor signs this legislation, she'll take shots at the governor.
Well, fair is fair.
It's not my job to tell Ms. Boozer how to do her business, but I don't know. Going after these people personally is going to help them in the long run.
That never works.
Okay, so the only reason I included this is because it's so bizarre. So Deputy Johnson was awarded a recognition for performing life-saving measures on a citizen critically shot in the chest with a nail gun. Now, can't you wait wouldn't you like to read that report and see how that whole thing happened?
I can imagine what that feels like. I don't ever.
No, I'm talking about how, you do know that you tell your son before he gets married, son, tell her you love her till she puts down the butcher knife, right? So I'm just wondering, the wife with the nail gun, if that's how this happened.
You would be surprised how often that happens, Harry. Nail guns are very popular. Actually, you would believe this. We've had 3 cases that I've seen where a person, 9 times out of 10, though, they accidentally they shoot themselves accidentally. They're stupid with the way they handle it, and they accidentally end up shooting themselves, which maybe those people don't need to be around heavy equipment.
And we're talking about those Ramset guns.
And the cannabis if your job is to operate a nail gun today.
Or if you're loading luggage into a plane.
Correct.
Okay, so the Orange Beach mayor had some kind of meeting with Aaliyah over policing the waterways. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that was a closed door. We don't know what that is. And, of course, they're hiring fire medics down there. So I just want to comment on this because I've had several people on the podcast throughout the years, not this podcast in particular, but the one that we did before, where we talked about family court, DHR, Dr. Carney, his evaluations, and how I personally have found him to be the Dr. House. You know, how, y'all ever watch Dr. House, where people come in and they have like some obscure disease only Dr. House can figure out? So for some reason, Dr. Carney, it's not just somebody's bipolar. Oh, no. They have this really rare form of bipolarism that you can't understand without me explaining it to you. Yep. So anyway, there's supposedly a meeting on the 17th at the Bay Minette Civic Center sponsored by the Burnett law firm of Spanish Fort, where they'll be doing a Q&A session, and it says giving out informational packets. So I don't want to crash their party. I just like to be a fly on the wall to see what all goes on there. And
I had a couple of people I talked with Saturday who were interested in that event.
I bet they were. Okay, so the Alabama Crime Network, 3 former Memphis police officers were acquitted of state charges. I mean, while we're talking about immunity, everybody saw this group that beat this guy to death, right? Did y'all see? We watched it on the podcast.
It's in the video.
Yeah, it looked pretty egregious for them to all have been cleared, and then
they were in the line of duty.
So anyway, this is just something that I came across on the internet. If somebody wants to stop it and read it, you're welcome to. So this August we're having municipal elections across the state of Alabama. And it became official this weekend. Sandy Stinson officially backs District Judge Spiro Cherigadis for mayor. And anyway, my only issue for anybody running for mayor was who in the hell is going to put Admiral Sims' statue back up? And, of course, old Slick Willie here has already moved the base of the statue to Baldwin County. There's no intention to put a statue of Raphael Sims back up, which was,
Can we put Raphael Sims back on his base now that the base is in Baldwin County?
Hell if I know. I don't know what they're doing. So anyway, I thought I would share this. David Wilson is running for re-election. It doesn't really matter who runs against him. You should who runs against him. You should vote for that person instead of Mayor David Wilson. And then this is a historical picture shared by Mayor Tony Kennan. The postmark on the back is September 1914. And, of course, we've seen what he thinks of this, right, based on the political leadership and all the construction going on down there. I thought this was funny, Brandon. I know you think it's probably not funny.
I can't see that it's funny, but
okay, that's pretty funny. And then this was, I don't even know what you call that, but Donald Trump shared that himself. But then, of course, the big news is it's Leo the what?
14th.
Leo the 14th. So, Brandon, tell us all about our new Pope, please, sir.
Well, most of our Pope observers who claim to be experts in this said that there was no way it was going to be an American. And even the few that did predict it to be an American, they mentioned people like Cardinal Dolan. They didn't mention, or the Archbishop in Atlanta. They didn't mention, Mr. Prevost, who's a archbishop down in Peru, though he is American from the U.S. He pays his taxes in the U.S. He even voted in the 2024 Illinois Republican primary. It kind of shocked everybody, but if you think about it, the Vatican is running, the Vatican, whatever we think of Pope Francis, not been economically the greatest run outfit ever. So they're running about $100 million a year deficit. They're going to need some money from somewhere. A lot of people are talking about an African pope and all this sort of thing. Africa kind of relies on money from the U.S. Back the Catholic Church there didn't see where they, I think they kind of said we kind of need American dollars to sort of help things out. So choosing an American pope, especially one with deep ties to Latin America, and one who's been picking the bishop, he's on the board in charge of picking bishops for Pope Francis for these last 2 years. I think it made a lot of sense to a lot of people in, one of the 133 people actually in the conclave, because that's who they came up with, and they did it pretty quick.
Oh, okay. Is he the first pope that likes guns? Is he the first pope that's an equestrian? Is there something? Okay, he's a White Sox fan. I can deal with that. I mean, I just want something American about the guy. He wears a cowboy hat sometimes. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, he's big into the White Sox. His mom was Spanish, and his dad's just sort of a Chicago guy.
Okay, so I can deal with it. So his brother was run down. Did y'all see the interview with his brother on the streets of Illinois? That was pretty good. And he was like, hey, we couldn't be prouder. We hate that we're celebrities now. So, so I think that's pretty cool that we have the first American pope. See how it goes. Nick Saban expected to co-chair Trump's commission on college sports targets NIL. So seeing as he got out of sports because he no longer had an advantage because everybody could offer money, he's going to go up there and fix it. Is that a cheap shot?
We're in an era where I think I technically could be a college football head coach. Because, what is it? It's not me going to your house and convincing mom, I'm going to take care of your boy for 4 years. It's, hey, my NIL guys will pay $900,000 for your kid services. Sign here.
Ohio State did it to the tune of $20 million in 2023 alone.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, as a member of the Troy Board of Trustees now, one of the disadvantages I see of NIL is the big boys are going to get bigger and the medium-sized schools will wilt because you can't compete. We lost a player this year in the all-season football, and we lost them for right at $1.7 million to Texas A&M. You can't. Small schools like Troy, South
Well, hell,
Alabama,
Cam, let's just pass the hat, and we'll be able to go with that, no problem, right?
But I mean, the small schools will wither because there's no way they can compete. They don't have that kind of money. So there's got to be some way of leveling the playing field some. I mean, Troy's never going to beat an Ohio State. Come on, we know that. But at the same time, it shouldn't be that whoever got the most money has the best team. That is not what college football was designed to be like.
I mean, UAB played Memphis in their conference championship game to be, the team from the All-American Conference that goes to the NCAA tournament. Of course, they didn't win that game, so they didn't get to go to the tournament, but they made a deep NIT run. Every single player but one on that basketball team left. Some graduated, but most went to the portal seeking more money than they get paid at UAB.
What people forget about with NIL is exactly what it is. NIL was always supposed to be name, image, and likeness. If you were using my name on T-shirts, if you were using it for shoes, then I should get compensated. That's not a problem. It's not turned into that. It's turned into, I'll come look at your school, but you got to give me $100,000 up front to do it. That's not NIL. That's called just legalized bribery.
There you go.
Finally, I mean, we had this image of of the player's dad selling his jersey out of the back of a car, and that we're going to make that legal. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. I'm all, for that. Why don't he just go down there on A Day and be selling T-shirts? Oh yeah, we'll buy your son's shirt for $50 or whatever.
Yeah.
So Cam,
that's not what it was. It's become. Auburn has a collective. I think Troy probably has a collective, and you get big time booster. I mean, Auburn's sending me emails wanting me to join the collective. And the collective just goes out and how much money will you do to transfer to my? I mean, we're paying for people to transfer in the portal in the fall, and then a lot of the coaches want to get rid of spring practice because if a player doesn't look good, that's why we didn't have an A-Day game this year. Because if a player looks bad in his A-Day game, what he's going to do is the minute the spring practice is over, he's going to enter that spring transfer portal and get out of there because it looks like somebody else is going to get playing time ahead of him. Or if he flashes and somebody saw him, well, he looked good. Yeah, they're going, get in the portal, dude, and we'll give you more money. This is crazy. There needs to be some regulation.
All right, so I have a question for you, and you can certainly refuse to answer on the grounds of HIPAA. But Brandon and I are bad sheep, and we both got vaccinated. I'm wondering if you deserve this award or not.
Nope, I actually got vaccinated.
Yeah,
I did get vaccinated, and I did eventually come down with COVID. This is probably like year 2, but it wasn't as bad. Now, whether the vaccine is what made those symptoms milder, my wife and I both got it, and I get. There's always been a conspiracy about vaccines out there, but it's your choice, and I got it because we have 2 little kids, and I wanted to be minimized if I got COVID. So yeah, I got the vaccine.
Yep, me too. So did you know that more than 24 million pounds of shrimp were harvested in 2020? This little further to see, as Bubba Blue once called shrimp, contributes 80% of the state's total economic fish harvest. The Alabama seafood industry alone created $442.9 million sales impact in 2022. So, I guess it was National Shrimp Day a few days ago. And we've been talking about how tariffs could really make, like, I could quit my job as a lawyer and go buy a shrimp boat and make a living as a shrimper if these tariffs were imposed on, non-native shrimp.
Mm-hmm.
So just seems like an easy one. So more things underwater around here. 2025 Great Scallop Search. Now this is just right across in Florida here, but we also have scallops in Perdita Bay. Did you know that?
There's also an argument to be made, and this is interesting because retailers in general do not like tariffs in general, and then usually restaurant associations don't. In this case, when it comes to seafood, they actually do like penalizing, in general, they like penalizing other countries, because what happens is you have shrimp and a lot of fish that come out of Vietnam, Bangladesh, where they raise them in cages, and the cages are in water where the same water their sewer runs into.
Sewage lagoons, right.
Yeah. So what they do, that's how they raise them, and then they ship them over here, and we think you're getting, oh, this is great shrimp. No, they don't have the same guidelines and health standards we do. So in this case, I think a lot of people are in favor of restricting trade on certain seafoods because it's dangerous.
Absolutely. So, inspiring comeback of the Alabama flounder fishery. So I am a lover of the flounder. If I could eat anything I wanted to 3 meals a day, that might be it. And so the Alabama Marine Resource Division has been releasing thousands of juvenile flounders each year, and we changed the creel limits, and it looks like the flounders are plentiful again, gentlemen. So did you ever know Danny Blackburn? This is his son, Grant. He just retired from the practice of law and is using his offshore powerboat to take people fishing. That's his Peter Pan job now. And so, anyway, he has been put on the Mobile Baykeeper Board of Directors, and I have high hopes for him. Now, the reason I have high hopes for him is that I had reason to go over and meet with the Corps of Engineers about the last 71 contiguous acres in Point Clear that my client owns, and we were there talking about wetland protection, and I said, hey, how come you monkeys are still dumping the mud in Mobile Bay that you're dredging out of the chip channel? Now, you got a permit to do it as an emergency 3 years ago. It ain't still a damn emergency. So, again, I find myself on the same side as Chris Elliott, asking why in the hell are we dumping the mud in Mobile Bay? It's the only body of water where they can do that in the entire country.
I think Chris Elliott's had like 500,000 internet clicks on that video he's got of the mud dumping into the bay there.
Right. But, and you got to remember, we did a whole podcast about that where they were talking about building that artificial whatever, and it turns out that they were going to build it on the last spawning grounds of whatever it was, the tarpon or something. I don't know. But it just seems like ADM just keeps screwing up. The Corps of Engineers can do whatever they want. ADM's just kind of a hollow suit. And, he may be your best friend, but the day LaFleur's last day, I'm going to dance a jig. And I'm glad they named the building after him.
He's retiring here soon.
He's retired.
I think he's retiring, or he has already retired.
Well, they named the building after him last week.
Retired. He was like the longest serving guy in that position for any state in the country. We've named the building after him in Mobile.
Yeah.
Anyway, I never had to deal much with him.
Well, I can just tell you, when they did the public hearing on this coal ash pile up here, they did it at the La Quinta Inn out on, at I can't even remember what little town it was in. And anyway, it wasn't much of a public hearing because of COVID. You couldn't even hear the people that were speaking, and if you didn't sign up prior to, you never got in the room in front of the camera to say anything. So anyway, I just didn't think he was very effective, and I'll be glad when he's gone. Steve Marshall and 25 other AGs sue Hawaii. So I actually read the amicus brief that was filed with this because of my involvement with Bama Carey. I can tell you that here's the issue. The presumption is that the Second Amendment allows you to carry your firearm wherever you'd like to. Right. They passed a law in Hawaii that says if you're going on to commercial property, the only way that you can carry a concealed weapon onto commercial property is if the owner explicitly has a sign up that says you can carry a gun on my property. So if you stop at a gas station, which is a commercial property, and they don't have a sign up saying you can have a gun, you could be arrested and charged with, So anyway, this is actually an amicus brief. I don't know if he didn't actually file the lawsuit.
Yeah, but he just joined the coalition. If I was Attorney General, which I would never be because I'm not an attorney.
You don't have to be an attorney to be the Attorney General. Go ahead.
Well, and 24 other guys, Attorney Generals, were doing this. Yeah, I would sign it too.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about that, I will say this. One thing that's interesting is that approach. I had not heard this news yet, but that approach is very different than debate Alabama had on this, because in Alabama, it's the flip. Basically, it's presumed you're allowed to unless there's a clearly posted sign on private property, commercial property, private property says no firearms allowed or whatever, and you have to have that posted, or else it's there's no prohibition. So that's kind of an opposite approach, an odd approach to do it that way.
Yeah, it's like everything else in Hawaii.
Yeah, it's odd.
58 criminal cases unprosecutable due to Alabama Police Department illegal actions. Guess where this is, Brandon?
Is this up in Huntsville?
Huntsville, where the whole thing was.
I don't know how any of those Huntsville police that you're prosecuting can possibly testify against anybody, especially in a drug case.
Yeah,
that's a terrible case. Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, it's really bad. Leadership Baldwin County Alumni Night, June 12th. So anyway, I graduated from leadership in like 96 or something like that. So I thought this was a pretty good one. So, we live down here on Burns Lake and we have a bunch of kayaks and there's a bunch of alligators down there. So hopefully Pam won't see this podcast, but woman in canoe attacked and killed by alligator in Florida. That's very rare. Very, very rare.
Kissimmee. They're shooting Kissimmee where she's attacked.
Yep. It doesn't seem like a alligator infested place, does it? So does anybody know Jessica Aber? She was
I saw this.
Yeah, a U.S. attorney for the Eastern District.
And
so I don't know. I don't know if it was. There's no further information about this at all. Zero.
Yeah, that's one you would like to know a lot more, but why it's not being released? It could be protecting her privacy. I don't know, but I mean, as young as she is, ideal height and weight, and given what she investigated when she was with the DOJ, I would think there'd be a lot of eyeballs on this.
Yeah, that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
To me. Okay, so do y'all remember the man who said Hurricane Frederick is going to Brownsville, Texas, and then it turned north and hit Mobile? That would be John Ed Thompson. And then a few years, he's our beloved newsman or weatherman down here on the coast. And then, like last year, somebody beat him up at a convenience store. And I don't know that guy survived the ride to the police station, if you know what I mean. I mean, everybody really did like John Ed, and it's a shame that he's gone. But everybody has fond memories of him. So did anybody see the meth pipe crack pipe raccoon? That might be one of the best traffic cams I've ever seen.
Yep, that's funny.
And what's the chances that the coon would actually have the crack pipe in his hand? That's the...
Man was ready to party.
Okay, so Trump administration poised to accept Palace in the Skies as a gift from the country of Qatar. Am I saying that?
Qatar. Yeah.
Qatar.
Hey, QATR.
So there's an emoluments clause that says no federal official can accept a gift from a foreign government unless Congress approves it. And it appears that this plane is being given to the United States for use of Donald Trump. And then when he is no longer president, it becomes part of the property of his presidential library. So then he has his own gold-plated Air Force One or wherever they're going to do special for him. Seems like there might be some kind of problem there, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, we ordered a new Air Force One. I think the old jet dates back to like 1970 something.
Well, actually, the current one they're flying on, if I'm not mistaken. So Ronald Reagan's was transferred out when he left office in 88. And then there was a new one. They kind of go in five, like your next Air Force One is planned 5 years before it's actually delivered. Yeah. And so I don't know when this one is, the one they had now, I think is pretty old.
Trump ordered this one the last time he was president, and Boeing's still not done with it.
Boeing has a huge cost overrun. I know this much on the Air Force One side. The apparently there's a huge cost overrun with the new Air Force One, and you actually have two Air Force Ones. People don't talk about that, but the president can rotate out of either one.
Yeah. So one can be down for maintenance at any time. It's still flying around.
But I thought that the plans for this plane would be right up there with like all kinds of, they would be super top secret, and we wouldn't sell the plane to anybody.
It's a customized deal and not just one off the assembly line.
But
if the president could just fly any jet, it would be no big deal. So
you'll have to modify it tremendously to meet all the security specifications.
So I don't want to get on some list of like looking up the schematics of Air Force One, but remember Escape from New York when the president's plane crashes and there's like a space capsule that comes down after the plane. Like, is that legit? Isn't there a capsule in there for the president to get in?
Stuff is classified about Air Force One.
Okay, well, that's what I figured. I figured there was no way to know what the truth was. Okay, so I'm going to do this, turning back the times 50 years ago today. And, of course, this was more than 50 years ago today now. But in July 28th, 1927, Tuesday morning, a 301-pound bear was killed in the cornfield of J.B. Crosby, 2 miles north of Stockton. He was killed by George Edward Bryant using a Winchester rifle. And, of course, that's my great-grandfather, my papa.
Oh, there you go.
How about that? So does everybody know who Albert J. Pickett was?
I do not.
No, I do not.
So he was some dude that wrote the history of Alabama. And he also wrote, and incidentally, of Georgia and Mississippi. So he is our unofficial, historian, the first historian. And so anyway, it turns out that he came down here at one point in time during the Creek and Indian War. And then after the big land rush, after we threw all the Indians out, he wrote this country is no longer half so beautiful. The water of Alabama began to be discolored. The forests have been cut down. Streams have destroyed. The finny race, deer bound not over the plain. The sluggish bear has ceased to wind through the swamps. The bloody panthers does not spring upon his prey. Wolves has ceased to howl upon the hills. Birds cannot be seen in the branches of trees. Graceful warriors guide no longer their well-shaped canoes, and beautiful squaws loiter not upon the plains, nor picking the delicious berries. And essentially he's saying, in 1832, this damn place was completely ravaged by human interaction. And I just thought that was...
there used to be elk. There used to be bison, cougar, wolf, a lot of, the larger game animals in Alabama were hunted to extinction. In fact, the white-tailed deer was pretty much limited to a small herd in Marengo County at the beginning of the, around 1900. I mean, the Alabama Department of Conservation did a yeoman's job of multiplying and restocking deer from that herd all over the state. There's like 2 million of them now, and we were down to like 2,000 at one point.
Well, it's certainly a testament to what. Now, this is a picture I took last week. We certainly have made progress. That's looking down from Goat Hill at the the state Supreme Court building, and of course, there's we have y'all seen the pine tree that's growing right here, Cam? Have you seen it? The sapling that was on the Apollo 7 or whatever it was.
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
I mean, we pay homage to nature, right? Not much, but we do. And then, of course, this is what my grill looked like on Saturday. There were a bunch of doves, so I pulled up my 410 and popped one and then cooked it for my dog, right? And, it's a beautiful place. There's a whole lot of development, and it's just kind of a shame that I can tell you, Cam, when I was born here in 1973, this place was paradise. It took 35 minutes to drive from Bay Minette and be at the Hangout, and there was like one condo down there. And so now, everybody knows what's going on down there. So anyway, I thought we would keep it down at the beach. Is everybody familiar with the wharf, the amphitheater at the wharf? So there's a Jimmy Buffett, I guess the Coral Reefer Band is going to be in concert, and everybody knows Mac McAnally. He's the only Coral Reefer band member that I'm familiar with, but that ought to be a good time. And then, of course, Orange Beach is going to have a groundbreaking tomorrow for the new Margaritaville Resort. You guys heard about that?
Yes, I have heard about that.
And so along those same lines, around 29 million tourists vacation in Alabama beaches, hotels, state park, and campgrounds in 2024, setting records for the fourth year in a row. Almost $1 billion. That's pretty cool. And that's it, boys and girls. Mr. Ward,
I enjoyed it, guys.
This has been a heck of a good podcast, man. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you and see what you're doing. And so what's next? What's after pardons and paroles?
Oh, I'm young. I can't retire yet, so we'll see. I mean, I've got plenty of time on my hands, so we'll find out and see what's next. Governor Ivey leaves office in 2 years, and we'll just see if the next governor wants me to stay or if I move on to other pastures.
Well, Brandon, anything on your radar for this week? I mean, obviously the session's going to wrap up tomorrow, and you're going to get to stay in Moody a little more.
Wednesday's the day.
Wednesday's the day. Yep.
Anything you got your eye on in particular? Is gaming going to be introduced at the last minute?
That never got seriously.
Never got out of the gate.
The big ones, like I say, is police immunity. Are we going to do something with banning drag shows? In public libraries. I think Gidley's 10 Commandments bill is on a lifeline in the Senate. The Senate has been a little bit cautious to deal with some of the red meat social conservative issues that the House took on.
And I will say this, they do have one thing that's going to take about a lot of their time, Brandon. They have over 50 local bills left they have not gotten to. And so that's going to consume a great deal of time on Wednesday for them.
No doubt. All right, guys.
I would let the local bills die, but I'm not a legislator.
Well, thank you for your time, Cam. Brandon, keep your powder dry out there in Montgomery. And thank you, everyone.